Hi, and welcome to the City of Raleigh's virtual open house for the Blount Person Street Improvement Project, Phase 2. We hope you find this presentation helpful. It's meant to be an introduction to the design concepts we are looking at implementing along the corridor during this phase. We are also hosting 2 live virtual meetings during the open house, one on September 14th and one on the 21st. During these meetings, we will talk about some of the concepts in more detail and answer questions you may have about the project. If you're not able to attend either live event, the project maps, renderings, and other materials will be available on the project webpage for your review, and you're welcome to contact the project manager with your questions. The project manager for this project is Reuben Moore. Reuben has been with the city for about 4 years. Before working with the City of Raleigh, Reuben worked for NCDOT. In addition to working downtown, Reuben is also a resident of downtown Raleigh. Sylvester Percival is Reuben's supervisor. You may see him during some of our virtual meetings as well. The city is working with Kimley Horn as the design consultant on this project. The project is located on both Blount and Person Street between Hammond Road and Delway Street, and at the intersection of Wake Forest Road and Brookside Drive and Automotive Way. We will also install a sidewalk from Brookside Drive to Dennis Avenue. With this project, we are also converting Lane and Jones Streets to two-way operation between Blount and East Street. The original scope of this project included converting the entire corridor from the existing 2 one-way streets to 2 two-way streets. Due to the results from a preliminary traffic analysis, we will not convert the entire corridor to two-way operation at this time. We will only be converting the 2 streets to two-way operation from Edenton Street north. Blount and Person Street will remain one-way streets between Hammond Road and Edenton Street. However, we are looking at traffic calming measures in this area to help slow traffic speeds through this section of the corridor. The Blount Street-Person Street corridor study was adopted in 2013 before the Downtown Transportation Plan or Wake County Transit Plan were in consideration, and before the Bus Rapid Transit (BRT) project was conceived. The city's Bus Rapid Transit (BRT) will also be utilizing sections of Blount Street for their operations. The city has decided not to include any new enhancements in this section between MLK Boulevard and Edenton Street with this phase of the project. As the BRT lines come into operation, the city will study how best to move forward with plans in this section. The Blount and Person Street corridor is a pair of one-way streets leading into and out of the downtown area. The corridor is 2 miles in each direction. The corridor includes a mix of residential, commercial, and instructional use. One of the biggest concerns, especially along the southern end of the project, is excessive speeds from vehicles entering and exiting the downtown corridor. During Phase 1 of construction along the corridor, the city installed bike lanes on both Blount and Person Streets and along Wake Forest Road up to Automotive Way. Pedestrian enhancements were also made along the corridor, including a pedestrian refuge island on Wake Forest Road and ADA-compliant curb ramps. Our goal is to turn Blount Street and Person Street corridor into a complete street, balancing the range of mobility needs by providing a place for all types of transportation. The 2 biggest challenges the team has in the design of this project is the limited space and the diverse needs of residents, businesses, and schools along the corridor. The city is trying to stay within the right-of-way along Blount and Person Street corridor. Some right-of-way will be needed to be purchased at the intersection of Wake Forest Road and Automotive Way, but the rest of the project is working within the right-of-way. What this means is we will not be making the road any wider. Therefore, the team needs to work with what is there and incorporate both on-street parking for businesses and bike lanes for cyclists, as well as add traffic calming measures to help with reducing vehicular speed and enhancing safety along the corridor. The team wants to get your input on the proposed design options. In the next few slides, we will be looking at different options we have at different segments along the corridor. Here we have an image of South Blount Street looking north. As you can see, the street is currently in a one-way traffic pattern with a bike lane on one side of the roadway, 2 vehicular travel lanes, and on-street parking on the other side of the road. Person Street along this section has the same configuration, just traveling in the opposite direction. Here is a rendering of our first option we are considering for the southern end of the corridor. As I mentioned before, it is not feasible to convert this section of the corridor to two-way operation. However, we are looking at installing a traffic signal at Bragg Street to help slow traffic and create a safe pedestrian crossing to the neighborhood park. This option also includes parking protected bike lanes. This means that on-street parking will create a buffer between the vehicular traffic and the bike traffic. Due to some bump outs needed to create safe pedestrian crossings and to delineate the parking areas at each intersection, there are some parking impacts with this option. On Blount Street, this option would eliminate an average of 6.4 parking spaces per block, and on Person Street, an average of 5.2 spaces per block. This image shows us what this option would look like. This is Blount Street looking north. You can see the bike lane is between the on-street parking and the curb, and you can see the bump-out island that delineates the area and creates a shorter crossing distance for pedestrians. There are also flexible bollards between the parked vehicles and the bike lane. This image shows what the protected crosswalk would look like in option 1. Notice that the bike lane allows a pedestrian to walk out to the pedestrian refuge island, where they can safely see the oncoming traffic, and oncoming traffic can see them. Here we have option 2 for the southern section of the project. With this option, we maintain the traffic signal at Bragg Street, but have a buffered, separated bike lane along one side of the street with on-street parking on the other side, where the street is wide enough. This option has a lesser impact on the on-street parking. We are looking at losing an average of 5.8 spots per block along Blount Street and an average of 1.8 spots per block on Person Street. As seen in this image, the buffered separated bike lanes will utilize flexible bollards to delineate the vehicular traffic and the bike traffic. Now we will look at the northern side of the corridor. As we see in this image of Blount Street, currently this section is in a one-way configuration with bike lane on one side and on-street parking along the other side of the street. We do plan on converting this section of the corridor to two-way traffic on both Blount and Person Street from Edenton Street to Wake Forest Road. Here we have our first option for this section of Blount Street. Option 1 calls for parking protected bike lanes. With this option, we are looking at losing an average of 9.9 on-street parking spots per block along Blount Street. Here we have a rendering of Person Street with parking protected bike lanes. On Person Street, the average loss of on-street parking with this option is 4.4 spots per block. This image gives an idea of what the protected bike lane with two-way configuration will look like. This is on Person Street, looking north. Option 2 for this section includes two-way conversion, buffered separated bike lanes, and on-street parking on the other side of the street, where the road is wide enough. The impacts on parking for this scenario on Blount Street is an average loss of 11 parking spots per block. This is what Blount Street will look like with this configuration. On Person Street, with the same two-way traffic and buffer-separated bike lanes with on-street parking where feasible, we're looking at losing an average of 0.3 spots per block. This image of Person Street looking south shows what that scenario looks like. Our third option is to have a two-way cycle track on Blount Street between Edenton and Delway Street. With this option, we're looking at losing an average of 11 parking spots per block on Blount Street, and we would still have on-street parking where feasible. This image shows what the cycle track would look like as well as the on-street parking. With a two-way cycle track on Blount Street, the existing bicycle facility on Person Street could be replaced with additional on-street parking. Because of that, the third option on Person Street stands to add an average of 11.7 parking spots per block, as on-street parking will be possible on both sides of the street, where the street is wide enough. This image shows what Person Street will look like with two-way traffic configuration and parking on both sides of the street. Before we move on, we know that this is a lot to take in during this brief presentation. For that reason, all the maps and images you see here today are also available on the project webpage. We will also go over the options in more detail during the virtual meetings on both the 14th and the 21st. Another component of the project is the addition of two roundabouts, one at the intersection of Person Street and Delway Street, and one at Wake Forest Road and Automotive Way. This slide shows the current configuration of the Delway, Person Street, Wake Forest Road intersection. Here is a rendering of the roundabout at Delway Street. This roundabout will transition the newly two-way Blount and Person Street corridors to the existing Wake Forest Road corridor. A more detailed schematic is also available on the project webpage. This image shows what the intersection of Wake Forest Road and Automotive Way looks like today. We propose to replace this series of intersections with a roundabout. Here we see the roundabout at Wake Forest Road and Automotive Way will look like. This roundabout replaces the current situation where Wake Forest Road, Automotive Way, and Brookside Drive come together in a series of complicated, congested, and difficult to navigate intersections. It is important to note the traffic signal at the intersection of Capitol Boulevard Ramp and Atlantic Avenue will remain. A more detailed schematic for this roundabout is also available on the project webpage. This project will have a public art component to it. Potential public art opportunities include standalone sculptures and/or artwork integrated into pedestrian paving, lighting, benches, bike racks, or other site elements. J. Stacy Utley and Edwin Harris have been selected as the artists for this project. They share the fundamental belief that the process of design should be rooted in unearthing the stories of individual collective histories and future aspirations. Utley and Harris are graduates from North Carolina State University, College of Design. Since graduating, both have had successful careers in the field of art, architecture, and design. Public artists J. Stacy Utley and Erwin Harris are gathering inspiration and learning about Blount Street and Person Street communities. The project webpage has more information on how you can get involved in this exciting process. So, what are our next steps? After the open house period is over, the team will review the survey results. The results will be posted on the project page shortly after that period has ended, and the design team will continue working towards the advanced designs. Public involvement is a big part of this project. We held our first public engagement opportunity last summer and then met with key stakeholders along the corridor last fall and again early this spring. Now we want to hear from you again. Tell us your thoughts on the options you saw here today. Our public online survey will be available through September 27th. We will also continue to reach out to the public and our stakeholders as the design progresses. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this presentation. Once again, we hope you can join us during our live meetings on September 14th and the 21st. And have a good day.